So, if you click this video, chances are you're one of many people who don't want to work anymore. And that's awesome. We're all fed up with the system at this point. But how exactly do you pull that off? You got to pay rent, you got to feed yourself, you got bills to pay, right? Well, there's a lot more to it than meets the eye. Life and survival is ultimately just a cup with a hole on the bottom. On one side flows in your income. On the other side flows out your living expenses. To escape the 9 to 5 rat race, all you have to do is fill up this cup. The problem is, most people fail to do this because school only taught you one way to do it: increasing the inflow. This is why everyone is so obsessed with making more money, going to school, climbing the corporate ladder, and last but not least, falling for all these get-rich-quick scams. Focusing purely on inflow doesn't work because no matter how much you make, you always end up just spending more. You've probably personally experienced this yourself. But what if instead you learned how to do something they never taught you in school? What if instead of being trapped in this endless cycle of making more, only to spend more? What if you just learned how to plug the hole on the bottom so that just about any money you came up with, whether big or small, would just stay in this cup forever? How much easier would it be to fill up this cup? Let's find out. Part 1. Feeding yourself. Let's start off with the most obvious, basic human need: food. We'd all love to quit our jobs, but you gotta eat, right? Well, yes, but what you probably don't know is you don't necessarily need money to do so. I'm about to show you how you can eat very well and healthy for well under $100 a month. In fact, you could even get the cost down to zero. I spent over a decade in my 20s as a permanent vagabond traveler, going from country to country. Needless to say, there were plenty of times where I ran very low on funds. One time I was down to my last $1,000 in a foreign country with no income coming in. So I knew I had to stretch that money as long as humanly possible to figure something out. It was around this time when I read a story about Elon Musk going an entire month spending only $1 a day on food when he was a young college student. I looked up every recipe he did: peanut butter and bananas with oatmeal for breakfast, and cheap pastas for lunch and dinner. Now, of course, Elon did this in 1990 when the dollar went a lot further, so it wasn't quite realistic to repeat this in 2017 when I tried it. But I did come pretty close. I did manage to spend only about $2 or $3 per day on food for several months, and this quite literally saved me. Stretching this money so far gave me enough time to find an online tutoring gig and eventually rebuild my savings. This saved me from being stranded in a foreign country with no money or worse, shamefully asking my parents for help. Now I know what you're thinking. Inflation has gone absolutely parabolic in recent years. Would this still be possible with today's food prices? I always want to make sure my information and advice is still relevant and up to date. And so I actually personally went out and tried a bunch of these $1 a day recipes just for you to see if this still works. And I actually discovered some very good news. You see, unlike when Elon did this, and unlike even when I did it, there is a ton of way better information and recipes available today, thanks to social media. Hey, for once we can finally say something good about social media and the modern world. You can find pretty decent recipes all over YouTube and TikTok of burritos, lentil soup, egg sandwiches, even some recipes that include meat, all for around $1 or $2 a day. So if you're feeling lost in life and you don't know what to do, start by challenging yourself to learn how to cook all these delicious cheap meals and get your food budget under $100 a month. This is an incredibly overpowered cheat code that anyone can learn how to do, and in terms of financial stability, will do way more for you long term than getting a job or going to college. Consider this a preview of the skills I will be teaching you throughout this video. No massive initial investment required. No needing to depend on a corporation to approve you for a job. No barrier to entry. Literally, something anyone can start doing today. Okay, so now that you've learned how to cook your own meals for under $100 a month, we can take this even a step further by implementing the second cheat code I'm about to show you: food banks. Just about every community has local churches and food banks where you can get some pretty decent food for free. This is usually food that would have been thrown out anyways, so if you're one of those people with moral qualms about being on welfare, you don't have to worry here. Contact any local church or community leader you can find to learn where and when your local food banks are open, and bring a couple big bags to collect as much food as you can. Typically, you can get enough food to last you nearly a week. Now, when you can combine this strategy with the one I showed you previously, it's theoretically possible to get your food expenses to nearly zero. All you have to do is make yourself our zero classic oatmeal peanut butter and banana recipe for breakfast, and eat the free food from the food banks for lunch and dinner, and you'll have more than enough to feed yourself without a job. The oatmeal breakfast doesn't even cost $1 a day, so in total, you'll only be spending around $15 a month or so on food. Pretty crazy, right? And if you really want to take this to the extreme, you can implement another cheat code known as OMAD, or 2MAD. This is where you only eat once or twice per day, and there's supposedly some health benefits that come with this. I'm not going to get into the science of it all, but it is quite interesting, so if you want to learn more, I've posted links in the video description about it. Now, if you combine this with the food bank strategy, you can actually get your food expenses to literally zero. I wouldn't recommend this though, as it's pretty torturous, and eventually you'll want to buy something from the store and eat something of your own choosing. But as you can see, using all the strategies I just showed you, you can easily eat very well and very pleasantly for well under $50 a month, we'll say. For me personally, I would go as far as to say that this is the single most valuable skill I've learned when it comes to an emotional sense of financial security. And I say that as someone who was an early investor in Bitcoin and Tesla and has a somewhat successful YouTube channel today. The reason is because on any given day, Bitcoin could crash, Tesla could fail. And I don't know how big this YouTube channel will get though. Thanks to your support, the recent growth has been pretty cool. But even if the whole world and financial markets go to hell, who's going to stop me from making oatmeal with peanut butter and bananas? Part 2. Shelter. Okay, so now that we've established how you can feed yourself without a job, let's talk about the next most important basic human need: shelter. After all, you'd love to quit your job, but then, how do you pay your rent? Well, the answer is really simple: just live with your parents. Just kidding, guys. I know you're sick of hearing me say that by now. But seriously, it's not a bad option if your parents will allow it. Not all of us are so fortunate, though, so for those of you who can't do this, how do you get away from having to pay rent? It is possible. I would know, as I did it for over 10 years. The answer is volunteer work. There are two main forms of volunteer work I found during my travels that helped me avoid having to pay for rent: hostel work and workaway. Let's start with hostel work. A lot of hostels operate on low budgets, as they offer extremely affordable rooms for young travelers. This means that they prefer having volunteers, a lot of whom are also travelers themselves, to help manage things around the hostel in exchange for free accommodation and breakfast. This is a win-win for both parties, as it's only a chill 20 hours of work per week, and getting free accommodation is often more valuable than getting some low wage and having to pay for rent. And this is even more true now than when I did it, because as you all know, rent prices have absolutely ballooned out of control now. Hostels are also a great social environment for being able to interact with guests and travelers from all over the world. If you're interested in trying this out, you can head over to hosteljobs.net and just apply for any opening you see. You'll quickly find out that it's a million times easier to get a response and a job from one of these than the traditional job market. Next, we have Workaway, which is a general volunteering website where you can find all sorts of volunteer work, from helping out a family, to farm work, to youth summer camps. A lot of these not only offer free accommodation, some offer free food as well. I did a wide variety of these in my 10-year travel journey, and it was all so incredibly rewarding. Unlike working for a soulless corporate boss, you actually make a difference for real, everyday people. Just like with hostel jobs, by the way. These are way easier to get than the traditional job market. Quick caveat here: Workaway does require a €59 registration fee, or 69 for two people if you have a partner or friend who's interested in taking this journey with you. To me, This investment was more than worth it as it saved me years of having to pay rent. And no, I'm not running any affiliate links in case you were wondering. Now, as an extra bonus, since most of you who watch my channel are Gen Z, I think this kind of lifestyle is absolutely perfect for Gen Z. The reason I say this is because Gen Z is infamous for job hopping, they're not afraid to be fired, and they have zero loyalty to these BS modern jobs and corporations. You guys are not afraid of change. This actually perfectly suits the traveling volunteer lifestyle. Generally speaking, you won't be staying at any one place for longer than 3 months, and you can rinse and repeat these gigs forever. I know people who have bounced around volunteering at different places for over 10 years. In fact, I myself was one of those people. And in the process, you get to see the world, meet all kinds of cool people, and most importantly, avoid having to pay these ridiculous $2,000 a month rent prices. Part 3. Mentality. So, now that you know how to cover your basic living expenses without having to work, now that you've seen it's possible, let's talk about the mentality you need to pull this off. You see, anyone can do this from a logical standpoint. No one's stopping you from just cooking cheap meals or volunteering wherever you want. But it's a scary leap of faith for a lot of people. I'm not an exceptionally talented or brilliant guy, but I'd say what allowed me to pull this off for 10 years was simply how much I hated working. Whenever I ran into some tough times, I'd always ask myself, is this worse than working a 9 to 5? And no matter how bad things got, the answer was always no. When my friends and family looked down on me for using food banks, I'd just ask myself, would you rather deal with their condescension but have an extra 10 hours of freedom to yourself? Or would you rather slave your life away for their meaningless respect? And seeing how many of you out there also hate working for these BS companies and this BS system we live in, I think you have the mentality to pull this off as well. When things get tough, just remember working a 9 to 5 would be worse. So hopefully by now, you can see how you can live a life free of having to work. Now, for those of you who regularly follow me, this video is not the full complete guide on how to survive without a job that I promised. You can consider this video a sneak preview of that. There's still a lot more steps we have to cover as to how to fully survive without a job. You're probably still wondering, for example, how do you make money with this lifestyle so you can actually start saving up? We'll cover all that and more in the full guide, which will be out before the end of the year. It will just take a bit of time for that as I'm pouring in, quite literally, my entire 15 years of job-free survival experience into this. So be sure you subscribe so you don't miss that. And in the meantime, you can check out this video right here on some of the cool hidden benefits that happen when you avoid working a traditional job.